Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top focus tonight on Gravitas is Trump's ultimatum to Iran. His message is loud and clear. Make a deal or get bombed. How exactly has Iran reacted and what do these developments mean for the region? We decode this and more in just a bit. And here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. As Israel expands the Gaza ground operations and pushes further into Rafah, we get you the latest from on the ground. Is the United States gearing up for war with China? A secret Pentagon memo names China as enemy number one. What does this reveal and what does it say about where things stand and what lies ahead? All this and more coming up. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about the escalating US-Iran relations a day after US President Donald Trump issued an ultimatum to Iran to agree on the nuclear deal or, in Trump's words, be bombed. Tehran has reportedly readied its missiles to strike US-linked sites. According to an exclusive report by the state-controlled Tehran Times, such missiles have the potential to strike any US-associated sites globally, adding that most of such launch-ready missiles are located in Iran's underground missile facilities positioned across the country. And these are, according to the report, strategically located to withstand any airstrikes. You see, since the start of the year, Iran has been showcasing such underground missile cities. And according to local reports, these missile cities are not just fortified and heavily armed, but they also have weapons, like the Qadr ballistic missiles, having an operational range of over 2,000 kilometers. According to reports, US bases in West Asia are on high alert, and this includes American bases in Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, all of which, by the way, are reportedly well within striking distance of Iran's ballistic missiles. And there are also reports of the British-American base located in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, also being on Tehran's radar. But before we go any further at this point, it's important to first understand what really led to things reaching this point. On Sunday, Donald Trump told American media that if Iran did not agree to the nuclear deal, then there will be bombing on a scale that has never been seen before. A few hours later, aboard Air Force One, Donald Trump once again spoke on the issue. Listen in to what he said.
I can't imagine them doing anything else but making a deal. I would prefer a deal to the other alternative, which I think everybody in this plane knows what that is. And that's not going to be pretty, and I do not prefer that.
You see, Trump's comments have evoked a sharp response from Iran. Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has said that the US would, quote-unquote, receive a strong blow if it followed through on Trump's plan to bomb Iran.
The enmity from the US and Israel has always been there. They threaten to attack us, which we don't think is very probable, but if they commit any mischief, they will surely receive a strong reciprocal blow.
And now Khamenei's statement holds a lot of importance. He's saying Tehran is ready to strike the US, but only as a reciprocal blow. Meanwhile, Iran's president has rejected any direct negotiations with the United States, but added that the country was open to indirect talks via Oman.
Direct negotiations have been rejected, but indirect negotiations, Iran has always been involved in indirect negotiations, and now too, the Supreme Leader has emphasized that indirect negotiations can still continue. Direct negotiations.
Meanwhile, US attacks on Yemen continue. The country's capital was struck by US drones and missiles, claiming the life of at least one person. The US reportedly targeted an area that is home to senior Houthi officials. Meanwhile, the Houthis claimed that they once again struck American aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman with cruise missiles and drones. As tensions in West Asia continue to mount, the question is, will the US follow through on its plan to strike Iran if the nuclear deal sees no breakthrough? And if so, will Tehran's retaliation prompt an all-out war, the scale of which West Asia has never seen before? The festival of Eid in West Asia has taken place under the shadow of war. Donald Trump may be raising the stakes for a potential conflict with Tehran, but on the ground, a bloody, relentless war continues unabated. Even on what should have been a day of joy and celebration, on Eid, Palestinians in Gaza suffered death, devastation, with no end in sight to the Israeli bombardment.
We are not happy about celebrating Eid. Poverty and hunger are burning our hearts. We cannot even afford new clothes for our children. Half of our loved ones are imprisoned, and the other half have been killed. How can we celebrate?
Now, as per the latest information, Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 80 people in Gaza, including children, in the last 48 hours.
He was wearing Eid's clothes. I greeted him. He was happy. He rejoiced. But the Israeli army and the Jews, may God punish them. These children's joy was not complete.
The Palestine Red Crescent Society also recovered the bodies of 15 missing emergency workers a week after their car came under Israeli fire. In a statement late on Sunday, the International Committee of the Red Cross said it was appalled at the deaths. It did not comment directly on the deaths of the Red Cross workers. But if that wasn't enough, it's looking like things are going to get worse. On Monday morning, Israel issued sweeping evacuation orders for Rafah, 2 days after expanding its ground operations in South Gaza. It's part of Israel's efforts basically to expand a buffer zone along the borders of the Gaza Strip, which they say will eliminate Hamas infrastructure. And over the weekend, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu repeated a demand for Hamas to disarm and for its leaders to leave Gaza. Netanyahu has vowed to step up pressure on the group if the Israeli hostages are not returned. He warned that Israel would work to implement US President Donald Trump's voluntary emigration plan for Gaza. Meanwhile, senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuhri has said that Netanyahu's comments were a recipe for endless escalation in the region. A day earlier, on Saturday, the Israeli military started its ground activity, the so-called ground activity, in the Jenin neighborhood of Rafah to expand what it described as the security zone in the southern Gaza region. The military released video footage showing aerial attacks. The Israeli military has said among its targets over the weekend were weapon storage facilities, rocket launchers, military structures. It also said dozens of Hamas fighters were killed. All this because on the 18th of March, Israel ended the fragile 2-month ceasefire and resumed its intense bombing campaign and ground operations in Gaza. Since then, Israel has killed hundreds of Palestinian civilians and has blocked food, fuel, humanitarian aid from entering the Strip for 4 weeks. Clearly, the strategy did not work because Hamas on Monday called on supporters worldwide to pick up weapons and fight Trump's plan to relocate Palestinians from Gaza to the neighboring countries like Egypt and Jordan. What has Hamas said so far? It is ready to relinquish Gaza's administration, but has reportedly warned that its weapons are a red line. Under these circumstances, are there any hopes for a ceasefire again? Well, it's hard to say. Arab mediators are trying to get the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas back on track. In fact, over the weekend, Hamas has said it had accepted a new proposal from Egypt and Qatar, but the exact details are not immediately clear. And Israel has said it had advanced its own proposal in coordination with the United States. But the big question is, will it result in the end of hostilities for good? We will have to wait and watch. Our next story is about Trump, Putin, and the fate of the Ukraine war. After days of cozying up to Vladimir Putin, in sharp contrast to US policy on Russia in a way, Trump is angry with the Russian president. You heard that right. The US president is furious, and he is making that very well known. In fact, in an interview with America's NBC News, the US president has said that he is, quote-unquote, pissed off with Putin's approach to the ceasefire. Trump, remember, is pushing for Ukraine and Russia to swiftly agree to a ceasefire deal. He has warned that he will slap 25 to 50% tariffs on buyers of Russian oil if Moscow keeps blocking the peace talks with Ukraine. Trump's comments marking a huge shift from the way Trump usually speaks about the Russian leader. And he has also ramped up the rhetoric against Russia, as Ukraine continues to suffer from one after the other deadly attack from Russia. Just look at what's happening on the ground in the battlefield. It's still on fire, even as Trump's efforts to get both Kiev and Moscow to the talking table continue. The fighting on the ground continues as well. On Monday, in fact, the Russian army claimed to have taken another village in the Kursk region. The Russian Defense Ministry released video footage said to be from Gogolevka, which the ministry said the Russian army had recaptured from the Ukrainian forces. Last Friday, remember, Russia had accelerated a push to try to drive Ukrainian forces out of Kursk. Putin also visited Kursk this month itself in a sign of increasing confidence that Russia will win it back and deprive Ukraine from a bargaining chip in the future peace talks. That is what this is all about. Earlier in the day itself, reports said that Russia had attacked the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv for a second consecutive night. The attack reportedly injured 3 people, sparking fires at industrial buildings and damaging 2 kindergartens. The state emergency of Ukraine released footage on Monday, showing firefighters putting out fires in destroyed buildings. The attack on Kharkiv, which is Ukraine's second largest city, lasted most of the night. The Ukrainian Air Force also said that it shot down dozens of the hundreds of drones that were launched by Russia during the overnight attack. Russia also is said to have used 2 Iskander-M ballistic missiles in the attack. A day ago, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky had claimed that Russia hit Ukraine with more than 1,000 drones over the span of 1 week. Citing Russia's continued fighting, Zelensky once again called for a response from the US and other allies. Meanwhile, Russia accused Ukraine of attacking its energy facilities and breaking the energy truce that the two countries have agreed upon. On Sunday, the Russian Ministry of Defense said that its forces destroyed 140 Ukraine's manpower and equipment concentrations in 140 areas over the past day. The Russian forces also struck a temporary deployment point for security service of Ukraine units with missile, destroying 170 Ukrainian militants and foreign mercenaries. But that's not all. The Russian forces also claim to have seized control of one settlement in Zaporizhia, and these are just the latest in a string of attacks on the battleground. So what will Russia's next move be? Putin has already called for the complete annihilation of Ukraine. His forces are making a final push on the battleground. How much more can Ukraine endure? The way things stand, Ukraine's best chances are in the deal being worked out between Russia and the United States. And Trump's threat seems to have worked, because on Monday, after Trump's threat to sanction Russia, the Kremlin said that Russia and the United States were working on a possible peace settlement in Ukraine. And the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that the Russian president remains open to contact with Trump, and that a call between them could be set up at short notice if necessary, though no call has been scheduled for this week. Peskov also said that some American companies had shown interest in a joint rare earth metals project in Russia, but cautioned that such discussions were still at an early stage. Just yesterday, we told you on WION that the United States delivered the first F-16 fighter aircraft to Taiwan, marking the first of the 66 fighter jets that will be supplied to Taiwan by the United States. And on the back of this development, the United States appears to be shifting its military focus solely towards China. A secret Pentagon memo reveals that the U.S. military is being realigned to counter a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan, while reducing its presence in other global hotspots. According to reports, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered a strategic overhaul, emphasizing deterrence against Beijing, while scaling back U.S. deployment elsewhere. The classified document, known as the Interim National Defense Strategic Guidance, was reportedly circulated within the U.S. Department of Defense early this month. Signed by Hegseth himself, the memo reportedly lays out an aggressive approach to securing America's interests, highlighting U.S. President Donald Trump's vision of prioritizing national security against China above all else. The Trump administration and the Biden administration both identified China as the top threat to U.S. national security, but this latest guidance goes a step further, identifying the defense of Taiwan as the central scenario around which all military planning must revolve. The document reportedly states, and I'm quoting here, China is the sole pacing threat, quote unquote. The memo categorically shifts American military priorities towards the Indo-Pacific region, further outlining a plan designed specifically around a potential war with China. It involves bolstering troop presence through submarines, bombers, unmanned vessels, specialized military units. The plan also prioritizes weapons capable of striking hardened or underground targets and improving the security of U.S. bases in the Indo-Pacific. Additionally, it states that the Pentagon is working to pre-position military supplies and streamline logistics to ensure rapid response capabilities in the event of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Pete Hegseth recently toured the Indo-Pacific region, meeting with American troops in Guam, stressing that they are on the front lines of this emerging conflict with China.
Allies in this neighborhood see the encroachment of communist China with very different intentions. And again, we hope to have a peaceful relationship with them. But we also stand with our allies to defend against that encroachment and defend American interests.
Meanwhile, the memo also places pressure on Taipei to increase its defense spending to as much as 10% of its GDP to national security. And by the way, Taiwan has taken steps towards increasing its spending. Its president recently announced an increase in defense spending to over 3% of the GDP, up from around 2.5%, as part of a broader military overhaul. And China responded swiftly, dispatching fighter jets and warships near Taiwan. The memo is clearly a major shift in the U.S. defense strategy. The country's focus is no longer on balancing threats across multiple regions. It's now squarely on Beijing. As tensions rise, one question remains. Is the U.S. preparing for an inevitable war with China? And at this point, let's tell you what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We focus on Trump's tariff moves. How far will Trump go, and will his strategy isolate the United States? We get to the latest from Myanmar and Thailand as we track the aftermath of the massive earthquake. Let's now shift our focus to what's happening between Israel and Turkey. Well, a lot is going on, with the two sides exchanging accusations over a series of posts on social media. With the latest flashpoint being Israel's airstrike in Beirut's Dahiyeh district, a Hezbollah stronghold. You see, Tel Aviv claimed the attack was a direct response to rocket fire from Lebanon, marking the first such incident since the November ceasefire. Turkey condemned the strike. On X, the country's foreign ministry denounced Israel for breaching the ceasefire and accused it of endangering regional stability. Turkey called Israel's actions a blatant violation of international law and urged the global community to stand against what it described as Tel Aviv's relentless aggression. How exactly has Israel reacted? All this prompted a swift response from Israel. The country's foreign minister hit back at Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, saying he was not just a danger to West Asia, but to the people of Turkey as well. With Israel's foreign ministry on X further accusing Erdogan of preaching morality to the world, while simultaneously crushing dissent at home, drawing a sharp contrast between the two countries, stating that while Tel Aviv acts to protect its people from real threats, Turkey suppresses its own citizens, adding that Israel will continue its defensive operations, and Ankara fired back. Its foreign ministry labeled Israel's accusations as outrageous, baseless, disrespectful. Turkey accused Israel of attempting to deflect attention from the alleged crimes of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his administration. And Israel's foreign ministry challenged Turkey's reaction, questioning, asking why Erdogan's government was, in their words, so bothered. Once again, referring to Erdogan as, quote-unquote, a dictator and mocking the idea that he wasn't obsessed with Israel or harboring anti-Semitic views. Further highlighting Erdogan's actions in Syria, even within Turkey, further stating, I'm quoting here, Erdogan's true face had now been exposed, quote-unquote. Also, just look at the timing of it all. This war of words coming as both countries grapple with massive protests. In Turkey, tens of thousands have taken to the streets, facing tear gas, pepper spray, mass arrests after the jailing of Istanbul's mayor. And in Israel, demonstrators are rallying against Netanyahu's efforts to fire key government officials and demanding the release of hostages held in Gaza. As both governments struggle with internal turmoil, the question still is, what do these developments mean overall? And are we looking at a serious escalation? Is there more to this than meets the eye? The Myanmar earthquake toll has crossed the 2,000 mark. Hundreds are still missing. Thousands have been injured. The deadly 7.7 magnitude earthquake, which had the epicenter in Myanmar's Sagaing region, also hit Thailand, leaving at least 19 dead. Myanmar declared a 7-day mourning period. Hope is fading as rescuers race against time to look for survivors. Our next report telling you more.
Declaration of National Mourning Days. In order to pay tribute to the casualties and loss of people hit by the 7.7 magnitude earthquake on March 28, 2025, the state declares 7 days of national mourning from March 31st, 2025 to April 6th, 2025. The national flag will be lowered to half-mast during the week.
Buildings, roads and bridges completely decimated. Hospitals overwhelmed with patients. Rescue teams struggle to extract and save people trapped in rubble. These are some of the scenes from present-day Myanmar, which is reeling under one of the worst destructions in recent times. Myanmar's second largest city, Mandalay, was among the worst hit. Rescue teams are racing against time to find out for survivors as hope fades. After being trapped for 65 hours under the rubble, this woman was rescued by Chinese rescuers. So was this pregnant woman who made it alive out of the debris, making her the third survivor saved by rescuers in a day. And there are more.
Currently in front of the Sky Villa in the city of Mandalay. This is the third survivor rescued and saved by China Search and Rescue Team, as well as Ram Rescue Union.
Footage shows extensive road cracks, with drivers carefully navigating around rubble and debris. If the earthquake itself wasn't scary enough, powerful aftershocks of 6.7 magnitude over the weekend forced residents to sleep outdoors.
I was stuck under debris. I got hit to my waist and my hand got chopped. It took long hours for rescuers to pull me out as my hand was pulled slowly out of rubble. Then things fall down on me just after I was escaped. I was lucky for my life.
The scale of devastation is equally alarming in neighboring Thailand, where a 30-story building under construction in Bangkok came crashing down as the quake hit the area, killing at least 19. The collapsed building was intended to be the new headquarters of Thailand's State Audit Office. Thai officials are currently investigating the metal and steel parts taken from the construction site to determine the cause of the collapse. After Thailand's Prime Minister visited the site and ordered for an investigation to be opened. The reason why it invites added scrutiny is because the skyscraper was being built by a joint venture that included a Chinese firm. This has also prompted questions about construction standards, which were being followed in the area, both in Myanmar and Thailand. The large-scale death and devastation due to structural failure has raised alarm regarding the state of infrastructure in the two nations, dotted by high-rise building and skyscrapers. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Shifting focus for now, Taiwan's national security faces mounting threats from multiple fronts, the largest and the most direct one coming in from China. In fact, Taiwan detected 7 Chinese Navy ships around its territory today. In recent weeks, China has increased its military activity around the Taiwanese territory, while visibly boosting its ability to invade it with innovative new naval equipment. This, by the way, includes the formal launching of an enormous landing helicopter assault LHA vessel, the likes of which no other navy in the world possesses, and the mass production of floating bridge docks to assist the unloading of ships during beach landings. These are strong indications, it seems, that China is serious about invading Taiwan one day. In fact, the commander of the U.S. forces in the Indo-Pacific region has said that Chinese military drills near Taiwan are not exercises, but rehearsals for war. This, while Taiwan faces challenges from its longtime security partner, the U.S., while America's willingness to intervene under President Trump is in question, it continues building pressure on the Asian side, on the Asian country, to spend more to build up its armed forces, which would imply buying more weapons from the U.S., Taiwan's only major foreign arms supplier. And Trump and his nominee for Undersecretary of Defense have said that Taiwan should be spending 10% of its GDP on defense. Taiwanese government saying it is impossible. Not to forget the internal differences in Taiwan. Taiwan's 2 major political parties have fundamentally different views on how to deal with China. For the KMT, China is eternally Taiwan's mother country, even if a rival government currently rules the mainland. The Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, on the other hand, reflects Taiwanese nationalism. For the DPP, China is an enemy country. Shifting focus now, hot inflation and cooling consumer spending are trends that are likely to be intensified by President Donald Trump's aggressive moves on tariffs and government spending cuts. Stagflation fears are rising globally and in the U.S. and will constrain the Federal Reserve's ability to cut rates further. Our next report telling you more.
The new week is going to be hectic. With 25% tariffs announced on foreign steel and aluminium, now extended to 25% levy on autos investors. Look for what else is subject to taxes on Liberation Day. This is when reciprocal tariffs will be announced on countries that have cheated America and will be in addition to the already announced measures. The crux of this issue is that US exports are hit by higher tariffs abroad than the equivalent foreign goods entering America. Reciprocal tariffs. Deal with this, in theory, by matching American tariffs on a product-by-product and country-by-country basis. But that's hideously complicated to do in practice. These reciprocal tariffs could be longer lasting than the measures we've seen so far. The US administration desperately needs the revenue. For that, some tariffs have to end up sticking, and that's more likely to happen for countries with long-running and sizable trade deficits. Global markets have taken the brunt of Trump's tariffs so far. World stocks have started to fall again, and investors are quickly recognizing that Trump is more tolerant of market weakness this time. Stock market weakness still looks like one of the more obvious trigger points for tariff de-escalation. Big tariffs also should mean a stronger dollar. But it was striking how little the surprise announcement of 25% auto tariffs impacted FX markets. Either that says tariffs are basically baked into markets now, or investors don't think they'll last. Higher inflation is clearly bad news for consumers. Unsurprisingly, confidence is falling. But does that weaker sentiment map across to the hard economic data? The Fed is skeptical. American consumers don't like tariffs. For Europe, Trump's trade war is a much bigger deal for the 2025 growth outlook than the increase in defense spending. For emerging market nations, the risk is bigger. So, all eyes are on April 2nd to see what will be announced. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
Meanwhile, Elon Musk seems to be out buying votes. Days before a pivotal state Supreme Court election in the battleground state, Musk doled out a couple of $1 million checks to potential voters. Sensational indeed. But is it even legal? We'll get to that in just a bit. Meanwhile, here's what happened. On Sunday, Musk reportedly handed out million-dollar checks to 2 voters at a rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Musk also promised smaller payments to others who helped elect a conservative candidate to the state's top court in a closely watched election that he believes is crucial in advancing U.S. President Donald Trump's agenda and also safeguarding U.S. democracy. In fact, Musk was at the event to drum up enthusiasm for the said election that is in fact the most expensive judicial race in U.S. history. Not just that, the Tesla CEO said he would also pay supporters $20 for every voter they recruit over the next 2 days. The move, which drew legal challenges from Democrats, was allowed to proceed after the Wisconsin Supreme Court declined to intervene. But as per Musk, his giveaways were not even illegal in the first place. According to his lawyers, the checks were intended to generate a grassroots movement in opposition to activist judges, a term frequently used by Republicans to criticize judicial rulings unfavorable to Trump's policies and not to expressly advocate for or against any candidate. Musk himself took a complete U-turn on this and expressed his open support for the conservative judge, Brad Kimmel. He said that he was merely helping his preferred candidate to win the race. And this drew criticism from several quarters, including Liberal candidate Susan Crawford and her allies, who accused Musk of trying to influence elections.
But on a more positive note, we have this petition, sort of against activist judges, because judges should be simply interpreting the law, not making the law. So, in appreciation for the support of people in signing this petition against activist judges, we just want judges to be judges, which is a reasonable thing to ask for. And we're obviously seeing like some crazy stuff in D.C. where it seems like any federal judge can stop any action by the president, of the United States. This is insane. Like this has got to stop. It's got to stop at the federal level and at the state level. But let me first hand out 2 $1 million checks in appreciation.
So the question is, was Musk indeed trying to buy out voters to serve his agenda? Now, this is not the first time that Musk seems to be using this tactic. Last year, before the presidential election, Musk offered to pay $1 million a day to voters in Wisconsin and 6 other battleground states who signed a petition supporting the First and Second Amendments. But as far as Wisconsin Supreme Court race is concerned, this could be critical. A high-stakes election like this one could reportedly rake in $100 million in donations, with most of it coming out of state billionaires, including Musk, George Soros, among others. Wisconsin has been a key battleground state in the United States, and the April 1 contest will only determine the ideological tilt of the state's top court on key issues like abortion rights, labor rights, possibly election rules. Simply put, this election could make or break the future of some of the key issues Americans voted on during the 2024 presidential election. The race is also seen as an early referendum on Trump in a politically competitive state. Clearly, a lot depends on it as far as the Trump administration is concerned. Shifting focus for now, are you a fan of James Bond? Well, the on-screen spy needs no introduction. In fact, the dialogue, "My name is Bond, James Bond," remains one of the most iconic cinema products. Generations have grown up watching the spy series. Why are we talking about James Bond tonight, though? Well, let me now ask you this. Do you think the role of the iconic spy should be played by a woman? Well, acclaimed actor Helen Mirren, a Hollywood icon, has expressed her opinion, reigniting the debate. What has she said? Speaking to The Standard, she criticized the James Bond film franchise over its portrayal of women. She said, and I'm quoting here, "The whole series of James Bond, it was not my thing. It really wasn't. I never liked James Bond. I never liked the way women were in James Bond," quote unquote. Note those words. She never liked the way women were in James Bond, says a lot. Where does she stand on the debate over addressing the historic sexism allegedly attached by casting a woman in the lead role? She is not in favor of this. Interestingly, according to her, women would be better served by portrayals of real female spies. She told The Standard, quote, "The whole concept of James Bond is drenched and born out of profound sexism," quote unquote. She went on to say, I'm quoting further, "Women have always been a major and incredibly important part of the Secret Service. They always have been, and very brave. If you hear about what women did in the French Resistance, they are amazingly, unbelievably courageous. So I would tell real stories about extraordinary women who have worked in that world," quote unquote. She also showered praise on Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig, saying she is a massive fan of Brosnan and called Daniel Craig a very lovely, gracious person. You see, this debate has raged for the longest time, and her comments have prompted a renewed discussion on the portrayal of women in popular culture and the representation of women in the world of 007. And our next story is about Elon Musk. He has said that his company Neuralink will restore blind person's sight with a new brain chip by the end of this year. You heard that right. Musk says that his company Neuralink has planned on implanting its new brain chip called blind sight into a human patient for the first time in late 2025. Now, here's why this matters. Neuralink is working quietly on Musk's most advanced technologies, brain chips. The company, in fact, is working on a brain chip that could potentially restore full sight for someone who is completely blind. It has already conducted animal tests, and it has been doing clinical trials since 2024. Musk's announcement will be the first major step towards widespread usage of Neuralink. During an event in Wisconsin, Musk said that animal trials for the new brain chip had been successful. He said that the monkeys with the implant were healthy. According to Musk, the animal trials showed great promise, as a result of which they are hoping to do first device implant for a human this year itself. And if successful, it would be huge. We are talking about giving someone who is completely blind eyes to see the world. According to Musk, it will start off low resolution, but over time, with use, the implant will enable vision that, in his words, is superhuman. Now, it seems his company is already moving towards trademark. Musk's statement coming in a few days after Neuralink filed for trademarks for the term blind sight. But that's not all. Neuralink has also filed trademarks for the words telepathy and telekinesis. The first Neuralink brain implant was carried out last year itself, in January 2024. 3 patients were given what Neuralink likes to call telepathic control over body parts that they previously had been unable to move due to disabilities. Neuralink is yet to specify a timeline for the rollout of the blind sight chip, but just to be sure, several rounds of testing of the technology will be done before this new technology becomes widely accessible for use. Feeling clean and refreshed is mostly why one takes showers in a day. More than one, perhaps. It's often just a habit. But there is good news for those who might not like to take showers. A medical study says taking a shower every day is not essential. Those who find excuses to avoid the daily shower prescribed by elders at home and by society at large might have reason to celebrate. The trial study done by dermatologists at University of Nottingham on a batch of eczema patients has come out with results that they would embrace and consider a vindication on avoiding the daily baths. A randomized controlled trial on bathing in eczema patients gave surprising results. The trial was conducted on 438 eczema patients who were categorized into 2 groups. One batch was asked to have a shower 6 or more times a week, while the other only once or twice weekly. Surprisingly, the study has found no difference in symptoms between those who bathed daily and those who bathed less frequently. And with this, the study suggests that bathing every day is not essential. Also, it has been interpreted that frequency of taking a shower is not linked with increased skin dryness. Further, the study says the type of shower one chooses is too hot, too cold could potentially increase skin irritation, and that the longer one stays in water, the more it can dry out the skin. The dermatologist who conducted the study recommended colder showers over hot water showers. Use of shower gels, soaps and shaving products one chooses are also a deciding factor when it comes to how one's body reacts to the shower. The dermatologists have also recommended avoiding excessive fragrances and preservatives in products used for bathing. In fact, as the study makes mention of the do's and don'ts, dermatologists say that the best shower routine is one that makes you feel good and what works for you. The demand for extreme cosmetic surgeries has skyrocketed, but the question is why? According to world's leading plastic surgeons, it is after dramatically losing weight on slimming jabs such as Ozempic. The health benefits of the jabs are far-reaching, experts saying not only do obese patients shed pounds, but studies show the drugs help slash the risk of heart diseases and sometimes even cancer. But less talked about are the body problems they leave behind. On social media, users of Ozempic and similar drugs complain that they are left with sunken, hollow-looking faces, hanging melted candle skin on their arms, legs and stomach, empty breasts and sagging buttocks. Reports say these are not side effects of the medication, but a result of massive, rapid weight loss. And while fat tissues shrink away, the skin, which has become stretched over time, does not simply snap back. And in a bid to tackle the issue, people are going for surgeries from breast, bottom, and even arm and inner thigh lifts to chin contouring, tummy tucks. These are major procedures, but they come with considerable risks. As such, cosmetic surgeons are rapidly refining their techniques in order to offer fixes. For instance, there is a no-knife fix for an Ozempic face. It basically involves the injection of donated human fat. It works to gradually restore volume while avoiding the pillow face look associated with other cosmetic fillers. Today marks the beginning of the 9-day Hindu festival to worship the 9 forms of goddess Durga. It culminates on April 7. Which celebrates Lord Ram's birth, also known as Ram Navratri. This year, it coincides with a lot of other festivals, adding cultural significance across Indian states. Take a look. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. We're leaving you with Gravitas Worldview. Thanks for watching.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency.